Hello again. For most people, average speed over a given course is what determines success or failure. It's only really for people in the leading group of a race, an actual race, where tactics come into play, and it might be better to work a little bit harder than optimal and sacrifice your best average speed over the distance to defeat your opposition. So for most of us, being as efficient as possible and as fit as possible to perform at a given average level of effort and intensity over the full duration of the event is the most important factor. In saying this, I'm taking account of longer events where there might be some stops, there might even be sleep time. All these things play into the total duration of the event, and consequently average speed is that's what I'm talking about, really, your best average pace over the event. So not your moving speed solely, but your average speed, including stops and breaks and faster and slower sections. So the variables involved are your actual riding speed, its speed over the ground at any given instant, and that's sort of your moving speed. The time you spend at controls. If you're doing an organised event, you might have to stop at controls, get your card stamped, or various other things. You might want to resupply with food, so that takes time. You might have to go shopping in very long events. You might have to have sleep breaks in very long events as well. So how effectively you use your stopping time is important in your overall performance in an event. And of course there are contributory factors to your moving speed and how long you can sustain a given speed. It's like nutrition, how well you manage your nutrition, whether you eat enough, whether you drink enough, the quality of your equipment for the purpose that you're using it, and also your overall weight. Some of these factors are more important than others, but they all come into play to varying degrees. And how you balance these and make use of these has an impact on your overall performance. So for distance up to 12 hours on a bike or 6 hours running, you don't have to stop very much. You can carry most of your food. You have to probably resupply with hydration products or water, but that doesn't take very long. So stopping times are minimal, really. Then the next spot would be 12 to 36 hours, where you do have to stop a bit, but you probably don't have to sleep. And you can't carry all your food, so you have to either stop at shops and buy your food, or if it's a supported event, you get your food from control points, or a combination of the two, which is more likely. And then beyond 36 hours, you're going to have to do some sleeping, you're going to have more significant stops. So stopping time goes up, and the longer you go, the more you have to stop. Like if you're doing a multi-day event, like a couple of weeks, for instance, you probably need more sleeping time than if you're doing a 3-day event or something like that. So the stopping time goes up as the duration goes up. So as a consequence, if you want to maintain the same average speed, your moving speed has to get faster. And of course, other factors like climbing. If there's a lot of climbing in the event, then that has a big impact. It's amazing how much different hills make to your average speed, particularly because you're carrying on a bike. You've got the bike to carry up the hill and all your equipment. And of course, the longer you go, the more equipment you need as well. So that slows you down significantly. You can never get that back on the downhills. Both the overall amount of climb and how it's distributed. So longer climbs might slow you down more than shorter climbs in some cases, so it might depend on what you're good at. And steeper climbs will slow you down more than gradual climbs. You can maintain a reasonable speed up a gradual climb, but you can be very slow on very steep climbs, and in some cases you might have to walk. So it's a good idea to work out what your average moving speed might be on hilly courses. And it's very difficult these modelling tools that you can use, like Best Bike Split or whatever, they're not perfect. They give you an idea. So it's good to get an idea and do a representative training ride over the right type of terrain so that you can get an estimate of your average moving speed, and then you're much more informed when you go into your event. So I put this table together. It gives you an approximate idea of how much harder you have to go for a given amount of stopping time, or how much more power you need to produce to stop for certain times or sort of things like that. So it's really based on the duration and stopping time. So you can play around with these numbers and get a feel for your event. It takes significantly more power to go a little bit faster. And of course it takes a long time to build fitness and build average speed, average moving speed. So that's your long game, that's what you're training for. And you can make big improvements in your average riding speed, your average moving speed, by working consistently and systematically, doing hard interval sessions and combining that with endurance miles. You get gradually faster over weeks and months and years. But in general, if you train hard and effectively, you will get faster, but it takes a longer time. So thinking about the logistics, which means that you can minimize wasted time. So stopping time isn't wasted time necessarily, but reducing the amount of wasted time. For example, snacks. You might be able to get snacks. You might be able to go and buy some snacks at the shop, and you might choose to eat them on the bike, and then you'd be moving. So that's less wasted time. You can see that even if you stop for half an hour, you have to go a bit faster, which means you have to use a lot more energy. Your power has to be quite a lot higher to make that time back. So not wasting time is important. And I think this table illustrates how important it is not to waste time and stop too much. So everything's a trade-off. Stopping takes time. It's very difficult to recover from stops. And in long events, apart from perhaps taking sleep, which is necessary to stop you falling off and falling asleep on the bike and maintain safety, stopping for an hour is unlikely to refresh you sufficiently to make up that hour later on. So your stops have to be sort of lifestyle stops or life preserving stops or life maintaining stops, so that you're maintaining a healthy condition so that you can continue to the end of the event. They shouldn't be stopped to say, all right, if I stop now for half an hour, I'll be that much faster over the next 5 or 6 hours, because that's unlikely to be the case. Carrying food and drink is extra weight. So on very hilly courses, it might be better not to carry so much liquid if you know you can get resupply quite often. Although weight doesn't make as much difference as you might think. And you might have seen from previous videos where I've discussed weight, that having a few kilos extra doesn't have the dire consequences that you might imagine. And it might be better to be better equipped, have the equipment that you need, or not have that refined body weight that you've lost that final few kilos to be super light and then not have enough energy to complete the event. So the weight's not as important as you might think. But it obviously is important. It's like if you're 10 kilos over what you need to be, that's going to make a difference. Going harder for short sections is disproportionately tiring. So you might have blown up, you might have been for a long ride and you've had a fast patch, or you've gone out with people who are faster than you, and then after a few hours you start to struggle and you go slower and slower and you completely run out of energy. You have to stop or go extremely slow. And that's probably because you've just gone a bit too hard, either for the period of time up to when you do blow up, or just for a short period of time, and that's used a lot more energy than you had available, and as a consequence you have to slow down for a lot longer period of time to recover. So managing your speed and energy is important. Obviously taking breaks is important in very long events, because not taking breaks can lead to you falling asleep on the bike and falling off and getting injured or making a mistake, because the more tired you get, the less effectively your brain works, and the more dangerous things can be. Your decision-making process sort of falls apart, and your reaction time goes down. So be careful. Make sure you take enough break. And of course, what's best for you is dependent on you. Everything's very individual. Some people are better at some things, and some people are better at other things. I've coached quite a number of ultra-endurance cyclists, and they've had varying strategies and comparable performances. So make the strategy work for you. Don't worry too much about what other people are doing. Just learn from other people, but don't try and copy other people. So in summary, your average speed over the whole event is the main determinant of your performance in the event, particularly in ultra-distance events, in long events, unless you're one of the lucky people who's in the leading group where tactics can come into play. But that's not for many people. It's harder to maintain a certain average speed in longer events because the stops increase, and as a consequence, you've got to go faster to maintain a certain speed. On hilly courses, weight can be important, so bear that in mind, but remember it's not as important as perhaps you might think, so make sure you're properly equipped. In some cases it can be worth working a bit harder, like on hilly courses it's better to work a little bit harder on hills and recover on the downhills, but obviously you have to be careful not to blow up, and it might be worth staying in a group, particularly if it's windy. If you can sit on the back of a group of stronger riders, then that can help you along and help you perhaps get through a bad patch. But be careful, because it's easy to get drawn into going too fast and then blowing up. And as usual, having a rough plan is really good. Having a rigid plan is not good. So have a rough plan that you can be flexible about. Have some principles in mind that you know work for you, like what nutrition works for you, what daily routine, if it's a multi-day event, works for you, and stick to that, but be prepared to adjust it as needed. And that's it. Average speed is really important, and it's the thing to focus on. Improving your moving speed is a long game. Reducing your stopping time can be done with a bit of thought and careful logistical planning. Of course, if you want some help on these things, it might be worth having a consultation before your big event, and we could talk through things with you, and we found that that's incredibly valuable. In fact, sometimes it's more valuable than the actual training planning. If you want to join our EBR group, then there's a huge amount of experience within the group. We have a Monday workshop every week where we learn from each other, and you can learn from experienced long-distance cyclists. And of course, we'd love to coach you. I've got a very few spots at the premium level available if you want to work with me, and Claire has some openings as well at all levels. So please get in touch if you'd like to work with us. We'd like to work with you. And see you in the next video. Bye.